"How many women have you loved, your grace?" The question landed in the middle of the Gilmore drawing room like a dropped glass, and every fan in the room stopped moving at once. Alaric, 7th Duke of Gilmore, set down his cup without hurry and answered, "One." Lady Bexworth leaned forward so far that her feathers trembled. "One, only one. Then who, sir, who?" He only smiled. It was not a smile that invited a second question, and Lady Bexworth, for all her appetite, had the sense to swallow it. The conversation folded itself hastily around a discussion of the Hertfield hunt. Alaric drank his tea and did not look toward the door, though the door was the only thing in the room he was aware of, because a moment earlier it had closed behind a woman in gray carrying a slate and a paint-box, and the small scuff of her heel on the stair was still, faintly, audible. Her name was Wren Halliday. She had been governess to his wards for 3 years and 1 month, and he had loved her for 2 years and 11 of them. He had never said so. A duke who says so to a woman in his employ is not a lover, he is a danger. Alaric had learned that arithmetic early, at his father's knee and then at his brother's grave, and he had held to it with the grim discipline of a man holding a door shut against weather. "Your Grace," his butler Pennock at his elbow, "Master Tobias has sent word that the schoolroom window will not shut, and that he has, calculated the draught." "Has he?" Alaric rose. The relief of an excuse was almost embarrassing. "Then I had better go and be shown the figures." The schoolroom smelled of chalk and warm milk. Tobias, 9 years old and furiously precise, had covered the slate in numbers. Clemens, 6, sat on the hearthrug with a wooden horse and one shoe off, and at the window, on a chair she should not have been standing on, was Wren, wrestling a swollen sash with both hands and no dignity whatsoever. "It is the damp," she said, without turning. "It has swelled a full 1/4 inch, and Tobias insists we shall all be carried off by the ague by Thursday." "Tobias is frequently right." Alaric crossed the room. "Come down." "I very nearly have it." "Miss Halliday," he put a hand on the chair back, "come down, or I shall have to catch you, and then we shall both be embarrassed." She came down. She came down laughing, which was worse, and steadied herself for half a second on his forearm before she remembered herself and stepped back and folded her hands and became, in the space of one breath, entirely proper. He had watched her do that 100 times. He never grew used to how much he minded it. He shut the window with one shove. "You see," said Tobias, disgusted, "it only wanted a duke." "It only wanted a great deal of rudeness," Alaric said, "which is a duke's chief accomplishment. Clemens, where is your shoe?" Clemens held up the wooden horse instead. He needed it for a boat. Alaric knelt on the hearthrug in his good coat, retrieved the shoe from the fender, and put it back on the small foot with the awkward care of a man handling something both cheap and irreplaceable. When he stood, Wren was watching him with an expression he had no right to interpret, and he turned away from it as he always did, and said something about the light being poor for painting, and went out. He got as far as the corridor before Pennock found him again, with the second post. 2 letters, one from his steward, one in a hand he did not know, addressed to Miss W. Halliday, care of Gilmore House, and marked in the corner in a spidery flourish, "By kindness of Lady B." He should have sent it up. He held it a moment longer than he should have, and something in him went cold and attentive, the way it used to before a bad crossing. He sent it up. That night at dinner she did not come down, which was correct. Governesses did not dine with dukes. That was the whole trouble with the arrangement, and he had arranged it himself. By morning she had asked for an interview. She stood in front of his desk in her gray wool with her chin level and her gloves clenched in one hand, and she said, Your Grace, I must give you a quarter's notice. I have accepted a position in Northumberland. The room went very quiet. Outside, the gardeners were scything the lawn, and the sound came in like breathing. Northumberland, Alaric repeated. With a clergyman's family, 6 pupils. It is a great deal of work and very little money, and it is a long way from anywhere, which recommends it. Recommends it, he said. To whom? Her jaw moved. To me. Miss Halliday. He set down his pen. You have taught my brother's children through scarlet fever, a flood, and the funeral of both their parents. You have taught Tobias to laugh again, which 2 physicians and 1 bishop could not manage. You do not want to go to Northumberland. What I want, she said, has never been the material question. It is the only question I have asked you. She looked at him then, and he saw for one unguarded instant how tired she was. Then she said, evenly, There has been talk, Your Grace, about this house, about your reasons for keeping a young woman in it and never engaging a proper companion for her, and never marrying, and never going into society except when you must. It has reached the point of being written down. If I stay, it will be written down again, and next time with my name spelled correctly. I will not have your wards grow up in the middle of that. Tobias is 9. In 3 years he will go to school, and boys at school hear everything. Alaric stood. Who wrote to you? It does not matter. It matters extremely. Your Grace. Her voice frayed just once and steadied. You have been the most honorable man I have ever known, and you have never given me 1 word or 1 look that I could not have repeated in a courtroom. That is precisely why I must go, because I am not so honorable as you, and I am tired, and I am not certain how much longer I can be trusted to be sensible. She dropped a curtsy, and left before he could arrange his face. He stood for a long time looking at the door. Then he unlocked the lowest drawer of the desk. There were 11 letters in it, tied with a bootlace because he had not been able to bring himself to use ribbon. Every one of them was addressed to her. Every one of them was unsent. The first was dated the September of her 2nd year, the night Clemence had a fever of 104 and Wren had sat up with her until dawn singing hymns in a cracked voice, and it began, You will never read this, and so I may say it once. He had written to her instead of speaking, and burned nothing, and posted nothing, and told himself this was restraint. It occurred to him, standing there in the morning sun with a bootlace in his hand, that it had never been restraint at all. It had been cowardice with better manners. Lady Bexworth's carriage came at 3, for she had left a glove behind, and intended to spend an hour retrieving it. Alaric received her in the yellow room, standing. Your Grace, such a fuss over a glove. You wrote to Miss Halliday. The feathers went still. I mentioned, she said, recovering, that the world was beginning to talk. I did her a kindness. A woman in her position cannot afford. You told a gentlewoman with no family that she must starve herself out of my house to protect a reputation you were in the act of destroying. He said it quite pleasantly. It was, Pennock later observed to the cook, the most frightening thing he had ever heard in 30 years of service. You will do me the honor of listening, madam, because I mean to say this once and then never again, and you will find it useful to have it accurately. Sir, you asked me last night how many women I have loved. I answered you honestly. You asked who. Alaric's hand closed on the back of a chair. I did not answer, because I had not yet earned the right to say her name aloud. I intend to earn it before Friday. Lady Bexworth left without her glove. Alaric spent the rest of that day doing what he ought to have done 2 years earlier, which was not romantic in the least. He wrote to his great-aunt Hyacinth at Marlow Wells, a woman of 81, impeccable venom, and unimpeachable respectability, and asked her to come at once and live in his house as long as it pleased her. He wrote to his solicitor. He wrote to the clergyman in Northumberland, enclosing a bank draft sufficient to engage 2 governesses, and begged his pardon. Then he went up to the schoolroom and did nothing at all, because Wren was hearing Tobias construe Latin, and he found he could not interrupt it. He stood in the doorway with his hands behind his back and listened to her correct a boy's ablative, and thought that there were men in the House of Lords who had never in their lives heard anything so worth hearing. Great-aunt Hyacinth arrived on Wednesday with 4 trunks and an opinion. "You are an idiot," she said before her bonnet was off. 3 years. 2 years and 11 months. An idiot who keeps accounts. Where is she? With the children, aunt. He stopped. It was harder to say than he had expected, standing in his own hall. She has given notice. She believes she is protecting my wards, and she is not wrong that the talk exists. I need it to stop being talk. Hyacinth handed her bonnet to Pennock without looking at him. Then you will do it properly, and you will do it in front of witnesses, and you will do it in such a way that no woman in 3 counties can repeat it wrongly. I shall require a ball. I detest balls. Yes, said his great-aunt, that is what will make it convincing. The invitations went out under her name, 206 of them for the Friday at Gilmore House, and the county came because the county would have crawled over broken slate to see the inside of that house. Alaric had not opened the long gallery in 6 years, since his brother died and left him a title, a debt, and 2 frightened children. The chandeliers came down and were washed crystal by crystal. The floor was chalked. The musicians came from town. On Friday afternoon, he found Wren in the schoolroom, folding pinafores into a trunk that was not hers. "You are still leaving," he said. "On Monday. I have taught Clemence her letters as far as R. Her voice was steady, and her hands were not. She will manage S through Z with anyone. It is only that she likes to sit on my left, and the next one should be told. Miss Halliday, come down to the ball tonight." Wren looked up. "Your Grace, I am the governess." "You are a gentleman's daughter." "I am a dead vicar's daughter with £40 a year and a great many mended gloves, and if I walk into that gallery tonight every woman, there will know exactly what I am supposed to have been doing in this house, and they will say it behind their fans while the music plays. You cannot ask that of me, not even you." "No," Alaric said, "I cannot ask it. I can only tell you that I will be standing at the bottom of the stairs at 9 o'clock, and that I will wait there until midnight if I must, and that I have never in my life waited for anyone else." He turned to go. At the door, because he was a coward in retreat and it made him honest, he said, "There is a parcel on your table. It is not a gift. It is the correspondence of a very stupid man, and you are the only person alive who has the right to read it." He did not sleep. He shaved twice. At 9 o'clock, he stood at the foot of the great staircase in black with his mother's pearl in his cravat, and 200 people pretended not to watch him, and the musicians began the first set without him, and Great-aunt Hyacinth sat in a gilt chair at the edge of the floor like a magistrate. At 9 she did not come. At 9:30 she did not come. Alaric stood. He had stood at Corunna. He had stood at 2 gravesides. He found, to his mild surprise, that this was harder, and that he did not intend to move. At 9:45, the talking on the far side of the gallery changed pitch. She came down the staircase in a gown of dove-gray silk that Great-aunt Hyacinth had produced from a trunk with the air of a general producing artillery, and her hair was up with 2 curls escaping at the temple, because it always did that, and her eyes were red-rimmed and perfectly steady. In her gloved hand She carried 11 letters tied with a bootlace. Alaric climbed 3 steps to meet her, which was not done, and did not care. "You wrote to me," she said quietly, "on the 12th of September, that you had watched me sing to a feverish child until dawn and had understood in that hour that you would never again be able to look at any other woman without comparing her, and finding her wanting, and being ashamed of the comparison." "Yes." "You wrote it and put it in a drawer." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you had nowhere else to go," Alaric said, "and I would not have you choose me out of gratitude, or fear, or the want of a roof. So I resolved to say nothing until the day you were free to walk out of my house and refuse me. That day is Monday." His voice was not entirely his own. "I find I cannot wait until Monday." Someone below dropped a fan. Nobody picked it up. "Miss Halliday," said the Duke of Gilmore, in a voice pitched to carry the length of a gallery he had kept shut for 6 years, "you asked me nothing on Tuesday, but Lady Bexworth did in front of 30 people, and I answered her badly. Permit me to answer her properly." He turned so that the whole room had him, and he did not let go of her hand. "I have loved one woman in my life. Her name is Wren Halliday. She has no fortune, no family, and no rank, and she has been the finest thing in this house since the day she entered it, and if she will have me, I shall spend the rest of my life failing to deserve it. Will you marry me?" The gallery made a sound like a wave going out. Wren Halliday stood on the 3rd step of the Gilmore staircase with her chin up and tears standing in her eyes, and did not curtsy, and did not lower her voice either. "Yes," she said, "I have loved you since the flood, and I have been very tired of being sensible." He kissed her hand, only her hand, but he held it against his mouth a long moment, and the county talked about that for a decade and never once got it wrong. At the edge of the floor, Great-Aunt Hyacinth struck the parquet twice with her stick and told the musicians to play something with an obvious tune, since half the room appeared to have forgotten how to move. They were married from the village church 5 weeks later in the morning, with the doors open and the hedgerows white with hawthorn. Tobias read the lesson and got through it with only one wobble. Clemence carried a basket of primroses and ate 2 of them. Great-Aunt Hyacinth wept in a manner she afterwards flatly denied. Lady Bexworth was not invited, and made it known that she had been unable to attend owing to a prior engagement, which nobody believed. That winter the schoolroom window swelled again, and Alaric shut it with one shove, and his wife stood on the hearthrug with her arms folded, and observed that it had only wanted a duke. Years afterward, at some crowded evening party in town, a young bride with more curiosity than sense asked him, because the story had grown into legend, and the legend had lost its ending, how many women his Grace of Gilmore had loved in his life. "One," said Alaric. "And who, sir?" the girl pressed. "Who?" The Duke of Gilmore looked across the room at a gray-eyed woman in silver-gray silk, laughing with her sleeve pushed up because she had been showing someone's daughter how to mend a hem, and who had already turned to find him, as she always did, before he had made a sound. He only smiled, but this time he crossed the room and told them all her name.